Hello and welcome to another Utopian Conclave. My name is David C. This is Weekly Wisdom and Insights. We are going to be discussing the World of Legends final changes for age 106. And I have with me some special guests here. Our very own Persane Cat, who basically crafted this age's changes from proposed through the revised and the finals there, along with all of the age change committees, input and feedback from the community and everything. So we have Persane here, who's going to give us some insight as to what he was thinking and why he decided to change certain things and some of the balance around those things. And we also have Skraz here, another top leader in one of the top kingdoms. It's been around for a while, and I mean he's been playing for quite some time. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves here today. But it's a pleasure to have them both here with me to give some of the community some of their wisdom and insights into how they plan to handle these age changes in 106, along with the racial changes that have been implemented here. There's a lot of really cool mechanics changes that we're going to get into and really get into how it's going to work and what to expect, how it may affect the early game and the late game meta in the age as it goes. And it's going to be an exciting age for sure. And some of these things Persane, especially if you remember back in some of those ages where we had the double race choices. That was Persane's wonderfully brilliant idea. He likes to shake things up and get people thinking and doing new things, and we can certainly see that from these changes as well. So I'm going to let Persane and Skraz introduce themselves a little bit. So Persane, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your history and who you are?
Thanks, David. I am a US-based person. I have been playing Utopia since age 8 and playing in or running Divinity for about 50 ages. Divinity ran from about 48, 49 through probably 101-ish before our players kind of just needed breaks and we went to a ghetto. Last stage, I was playing in the Crowning Kingdom Delicious, and I'll probably float to another kingdom this next stage with some of the players that I've made friends with along the way. And with that, I'll pass to Scraz.
Yeah, so I'm Skraz. I've been playing since age one. I won age one, I won age two. I took a break from about age 40 all the way till the mid 80s, so I missed a good big chunk of Utopia. But I played in many absent kingdoms, and recently I've ran a retirement home for just old veterans of the game called Ghetto Vets. We don't tend to compete, but we have a pretty good history of winning Province Crown.
Pretty good history. How many ages have you guys won Province Crowns?
That's a really good question.
But
It's about 10, I think. I'll just
yeah,
check that.
yeah, no, it's been a bunch. It's been a bunch, for sure. Well, again, thank you both for being here. It's going to be great to get your insights into, how especially how you guys plan to handle this with your kingdoms, the kingdoms that you guys help lead, and hopefully some of our community and viewers can take away some of the strategy that you guys plan to implement around the new changes here. So why don't we dive right into it? We've got here the age 106 final changes here in front of us. I know it does say that the expected open date of the round was supposed to be about 39 minutes ago, and that hasn't happened yet, but it will happen very soon. So here we have the forum post with the final changes, and so why don't we let Persane walk us through a little bit what you were thinking on some of these quality of life changes here, and let's start there.
So the first thing was World Change Council has quite a few number of people, and the general talk there is to try and get things balanced, get age changes going, and then we oftentimes discuss things that just either aren't working, didn't get implemented correctly, maybe got implemented but seem to not work as we would intend, or just things that like I need this. So the I need this. One of those things would be, in reading the changes that people post in Muga, we brought over, hey, learns in amnesia, for example, not working kind of as we thought. But a bigger issue is, hey, at the end of war, if I got amnesia waived, my science is gone for 48 hours or 24 hours, and it sucks to have like half your science gone for end of war ceasefire when things like all your military comes back, all the bad spells are removed. Why is
Right.
science the only thing? So we took that kind of stuff and tried to implement each one of the things that seem to not work. So for example, the multi-attack protection. Smiles brought up specifically that, hey, I don't think this is working, and David and David looked in the code while I was talking him through it, and it's like, actually, it is implemented the way we said, but because of how attacks work and range works, it's not working as you would expect based on what is said. So it got modified to the point of, actually now you're going to have a decent less mutual attack protection, such that if I'm starting to try and bounce raise someone, I'm actually going to be able to do some damage to them.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
kind
So
of where the quality of life stuff stayed.
right, yeah. So specifically the map protection for the attacks there, it was, as you mentioned there, it was implemented the way that it was discussed and it was expected. It was still providing a whole lot more multi-attack protection than was wanted per se. And so what we did, I know it says in the post there that it's going to be slightly less multi-attack protection than the previous age. It's a bit more than slightly less, so it's probably closer to about 40% less than what was being provided right now if you basically bounced with near 100%. If you sent 99.9% of their offense, so it's going to be obviously going to be based on the ratio of offense to defense sent. And so if you sent just under 100%, you're going to get about 40% less than you would have last age.
So that's kind of where we started, and then the bigger thing is like, okay, what in the game needs to change? What in the game can we modify without fundamentally altering Utopia? So that gets us into the game mechanics, the end of war stuff, the stances. That gets us into that everything pre-racial and personality changes. So one of the things that we brought up specifically was the soldiers, and the point of a whole bunch of people would expect a soldier that has no defense to not die when it's defending. But
yeah, I'd just
that was
like
one of
to,
the prelim changes, was to change that. You go, guys.
Yeah.
yeah, I'd just like to interject here. I disagree with David on this particular topic, but I would like to state that I'll give David a chance to explain to the public why he thinks that soldiers with zero defense should die.
Yep, and that's where I was going to go next. So, would you like to explain,
Sure.
David, why you like having them die?
Oh, of course, I would love to explain. So the common conception for a lot of people, especially confused about, well, why are soldiers dying? Often specialists have no defense and they don't die. Well, my thought here is simply that offense specialists are a specific unit designed for offense only, and soldiers, on the other hand, I feel should die on any attack. And it's kind of just one of those things that they should die. There should be casualties there. And so they will die. It's one of the things that I equate it to is similar to, Nightmare. Like, why do soldiers go back into peasantry from Nightmare? Because that's just how that's just how it works. And so this is just how it works. That's kind of one of the base reasonings that I have there. So Scraz, what do you have to say?
Um, again, I humbly disagree, but the reason I disagree is that I think for new players and people that even like don't keep up with every minutia of change, to look at something and go zero defense, it doesn't defend, it doesn't die, is very consistent with the way the rest of the game works.
Sure, and I can certainly understand that, but I mean, there's certainly a first time for everything, and when that first time occurs, especially if we're talking about new players, you know, there's such a learning curve with all kinds of things here. It's one of the great things I think that people love about Utopia is that it can be so simple and still very complex to really understand how everything works. But if you don't want to get into the complex stuff, you don't have to, and it's still a very simple, straightforward game and how to play. And this is just one of those things. Well, how does that work? And you do it one time, and you figure out, okay, this is how that works, and now I understand how it works. And so this is going to be one of those things. This is how soldiers work. Soldiers always die whether they are attacking or defending, whether they have offense or defense or not. And that's my take on it, and that's how we want to have
I
it.
I very much appreciate the warning notice and military page because again, like I said, I don't
Right.
think it's consistent with the rest, but having that there at least lets people know.
Right, exactly, and I think that is a big part of it. Which, hey, it doesn't necessarily have to be something. Well, I need to test this to figure out how it works. Where it will be posted right on the page there. It'll be posted on the military page and the war room page, so that there's just multiple areas. Not that the war room page would indicate anything because you're sending attacks out in the war room page, but it does have to do with the military. So I figured it would be good to have it in both of those areas where you can see that it is written in the text that soldiers will die on defense, so that people are aware of it if they read. So, and especially as new players, sometimes like to read. If they do some reading, they'll see that they will die on defense, and then of course, as they get attacked with soldiers, they'll also see that they die.
Awesome. So let's move
And
on.
that's some of those quality of life things of, okay, if a mechanic works not as people would expect, we should try and let people know why it's not working as people expect and give them a heads up.
Right.
So that's
Probably.
that's one of the goals that the World Change Council tries to always do. And I think no matter what and everybody's opinion is of that council or what they think goes on there, everybody involved in that council wants things to be understandable and things to work like you would want. And so kind of all agree that those are the things that need to be addressed.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's a great group of people that put a lot of effort and work and have a lot of passion for getting things right and getting things consistent and making things, balanced and playable in a way that makes it, really as fair as possible for everybody. And a lot of times, I mean, Scraz, I know you take a lot of heat in some discussions and things where people, claim that you are trying to implement things in the changes that specifically benefit you. And I mean, I can't think of any changes that not just you, but any of the council has proposed that specifically benefit any of the kingdoms that any of the players in the council
Just-
plays in.
I'll just
So I'm
I'll just
versus
say this: that
thanks.
people in my kingdom literally hate me when it comes to changes because I continually nerf things that we abuse.
right. Yeah, so I mean that's what I was basically going to say there is like I can't think of anything that you do that or anybody does that benefits the kingdoms, but there's all kinds of stuff that specifically make it more difficult to do the things that you might already be doing or strategies that you already use that make it less prolific in a sense that especially if it's something that you guys have found to be easy to do or easy to be really really good at that not a lot of people might understand or be good at, so that it just makes things more fair and easily to compete for the less competitive players. So I mean, it's just
And I would point out that just because Scraz tries to nerf everything that benefits him doesn't mean there isn't something that gets changed that benefits him, because we have multiple people and multiple views on things. So when I make a change or I suggest a change or I really push for a change and it doesn't benefit my style, Scraz says, well, this is how I would abuse it. And I might say, you know what, I don't think that's abusable to the extent that you can do that. And then he's like, well, wait till the age happens, and we go back and forth, and it might still get implemented. He
mm-hmm.
abuses it. Everyone's, oh, see, it got changed for him. Well, it's like, well, that wasn't his suggestion. He argued against it.
Right.
There's been multiple times where that has happened throughout the players in that council.
Yeah.
So I'll go, for example, and just look at the general mechanisms. A good example is the hostile meter, thievery ops, all the values triple. So my perspective as a player is I personally would like to see, if you engage in someone, it should lead to war. And if the issue is, well, you can fight outside of war and do things, well, but if you're fighting someone, to me, that's war. And if you're doing stuff outside of war that war doesn't allow or declare is too powerful, those are changes we should do to war, not changes we do to things like the hostile meter.
Mm-hmm.
So increasing the hostile meter for this age, I know there are some ops that are just not impactful enough. And the point is, look, let's triple it, let the age happen, let people abuse the, oh, I can't get up back as much a little bit, and then let's actually rebalance a little bit instead of trying to do, well, we did a whole big change, and then we tweaked just this one op up a little bit, and just this one op up a little bit, and it's very difficult to see exact impact if there's a whole bunch of changes. So hostile meter being one of those things of, okay, let's just push it up a little bit, make war be a little bit more when you want to do ops, and then we'll go and try and balance that again in the next stage.
Yeah, so like for instance, Hussein and I disagree with a lot of these changes, but also, I want to bring it to everyone's attention that like the last few ages, Hex and I have been the ones that have been balancing and every now and again a shake up, which Hussein is great at, is not bad for the game to get people excited. So even though we're probably going to disagree in this discussion on a few things, just take that into account that I'm coming from a point of view where Hussein should get a chance to shake things up a bit.
Yeah, certainly. So this is probably one of the biggest changes that we're seeing here with the Explorer pool. So Persane, do you want me to explain how it works and then you get into why you did it, or what do you want to do, Persane?
Yeah, you go for it.
All right. So the way this is going to work, the way it's been coded is that there's basically two maximums for your Explore pool, your personal province Explore pool. The first one being at 1,000 acres. Your Explore pool will grow, and again, this is for World of Legends. It'll grow 2 acres every tick up until 1,000 acres. Once your Explore pool reaches 1,000 acres, it will no longer grow. Okay? It will not grow, but you will. So those 2 acres will automatically go into exploration. So it's not like you will instantly grow 2 acres. You will put it, it'll be as if you explored 2 acres. So, anywhere from 1 to 24 ticks, you'll get, those 2 acres. And for every tick that goes by with you at 1,000 acres, you will get those 2 acres put into the Explore pool. Now, what it means when it says end of war, at the end of any war, at the conclusion of any war, when a kingdom surrenders, both kingdoms get Explore pool. That Explore pool, anything that would reach over the 1,000 acres. So if you were at 1,000 acres, or if you were at below 1,000 acres and you were getting, say you were at 900 acres and you got 200 acres in Explore Pool. You would go up to the 1,000 acre cap, and then everything over the 1,000 acre cap you would get for free into your exploration schedule. So just like the 2 acres, every tick going into your explorer schedule, you would get anything over 1,000 acres that you're being given from the war win, or from the war conclusion rather, will be put into exploration. So
I
that's
need
the
to have
first
a
cap.
small interjection here.
Yes, sure.
I just want to make sure that from a coding perspective, David, that you understand if I dump a whole lot of acres onto one province in Explore 8,
Mhm.
and then we win the war, that those acres are not included in the bonus acres that get explored for free, because otherwise you're going to end up with 20,000 size provinces like week 2.
All right, so say that one more time, just so I understand what you're trying to suggest.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm worried about with the coding of this
Mhm.
is that, say, an entire kingdom aided their aid to one province who finished the war quite well, they then get the war win, they get the bonus acres from the war win into their pool, that the acres aided to them is not included past the 1,000 cap
Mhm.
and auto explored on
Right.
the, like, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so just so I understand you correctly, that kind of comes into the next part of it. But yeah, so to answer you specifically, that will not happen. So it's only going to be acres that are provided to the province from the war conclusion or the Tickley acres. So what it sounds like you're suggesting is, say you're trying to build a cow. You've got your biggest guy. He's got his 1,000 acres in his pool. Everybody else in the kingdom has whatever they have. Say everybody has 1,000 acres. Now this one guy has he's going to have 24,000 acres aided to him. He's going to lose a third of that. So now he's got 16,000 in his pool plus the 1,000 he had originally. So he's got 17,000 in his pool. And then the war win happens, or the war conclusion happens, and whatever he gets, say it's 100 acres, now he's going to instantly explore 16,100 acres to bring him back down to the 1,000 acres. Right? So that sounds like that's what you're suggesting.
That's exactly what I'm suggesting,
Okay.
that if you don't code it correctly,
Yes.
that could be a loophole.
No. So that is absolutely not going to happen. Only the acres that are provided will be explored and will be put into the explore schedule. So it's not a cut off at 1,000. Everything over that automatically gets explored. But that's what this next maximum is. So this 2,500 acres is a more solid maximum, if you will, in a sense that your pool itself will not grow over 1,000 acres. But you can be aided acres that will increase it to over 1,000 acres. At the end of a war, you will get acres that will put you over. So those won't actually put you over because those will be instantly explored. But you can get over 1,000 acres through through aid, and by allowing that to happen, we have put a more firm maximum at 2,500 acres, which means, but it'll only reduce back to that level on the first of each month. So in that scenario, your kingdom could send you the 24,000 acres with the if there was no tax and just the land being destroyed upon being sent. You've now got 17,000 acres in your pool. It would stay there until the first of the next month, and then it would be reduced to 2,500 acres if you did not
Yeah.
explore it.
Is that to just reduce aid cycling or siphoning
Why not?
and stuff like that?
Yeah, so that is just because we don't want. Yeah, so we didn't want to. Well, per se, do you want to
Yeah, I
explain
can
some
take
of the
that.
reasons?
So the idea is people like to build cows, people like to get big, but one of the bad things that could happen is, okay, this kingdom doesn't want to use their cap. So we're just every time you get near your cap, you're just gonna dump all your pool onto one guy, and he's gonna have 35,000 acres of pool mid-age, and then we're gonna, explore him up. And we can explore him up as big as the cow does, but he's got all the pool he ever needed, and he took weeks to build it up, so he wasn't taxed and it didn't affect his trade balance. That's just not really what we want. We would like to put a cap in there such that you can only really store so much pool. Otherwise, it gets abusable, especially if, for example, said 30,000 acres on one guy, you put 10,000 acres on 10 people. That's just not really the goal. Now, we didn't want to do every tick it's reduced to 2,500, just because if people do want to explore over 2,500 and they ate it, and then it's, oh shit, I didn't realize I had 30 seconds to explore, that fucks over someone. So let's give them a little slack, and at the day we'll reset it. But we don't want you to just have this unlimited pool that sits there and impacts the game as a store that nobody can really ever touch, that people can build up and you can use to manipulate things late game. This is an attempt to try and address that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I must admit, in previous ages, the idea of siphoning land to keep everyone under cap except for the person you want to explore has been something that I've kind of done. So yeah, I think that particular is a good change.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Excellent explanation there, Persane. So now, was there anything else with that you wanted to add in there?
Yeah, so the reason all of this pool and auto explore is happening is right now the way pool works is the amount of pool you gain in a war is based on the amount of acres exchanged between provinces during that war. And naturally, at the end of war, you end up with big people and small people. And the small people are basically forced to use their pool to recover, and that's one of the ways that acres get injected into the game is recovering your low end constantly. And that just naturally, okay, my low end was all at 100 and I push them back up to 600. My next war, they'll get back down to 100 and I'll push them back to 600. And every war, 6 to 8 people per kingdom are getting 500 acres injected in the game. That's great. And that keeps acres in a way that naturally pushes size up, naturally creates some tiers. But one of the things I wanted to do was mess with how acres are redistributed at the end of war. Well, how I thought to mess with it to have fun without being too abusable is to recoup most on your lower end. And we'll get to that in a second. But if you recoup your lower end with all acres, then there's no reason for anybody effectively to ever use pool. And if nobody's ever using pool, no acres are getting injected into the game, and you're never really going to get enough of a differentiation among the weaker kingdoms or the losing kingdoms, let's say, to the kingdoms that win a lot or that want to grow. So this is just a natural way to kind of inject acres into the game to allow for tiering and allow for kingdoms to split up a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's part of the reason why there's 10 acres provided every first of the month is to just inject acres into the game and allow for that growth of everybody and to put more acres available for everybody. And this will absolutely do that. I see some people talking about aiding out their acres so that they don't do that, and I mean that's an option. There's always the option to aid out your acres when you get to the 1,000 acre cap, or as you get close to it, so that you don't start auto exploring. And it's just how do you want to play it? How do you want to handle it? How does your kingdom want to deal with it? Because otherwise, if you've got 25 players all at the cap, now you're getting 50 acres per tick into your kingdom, and whether you want that or not, it becomes a good amount of acres, every day after everybody reaches that cap. And if you want it, great. If you don't want it, right, there's ways you can handle it by not actually exploring. And it's not one of those things where I need to aid my acres out so that somebody else can explore or something like that. But there's lots of ways to handle it, and I think this is one of those things that I like about Persane's changes is giving people lots of options and just changing the way that the game is played a little bit to to handle some of these things. And having more acres in the game is always nice. I mean, who doesn't want more acres, right?
Excellent.
Nice little graph there for everybody to see how's it's gonna work. Wonderful. All right, so stances. What do we have for stances here?
So for stances, I initially thought to add a defensive stance as, hey, we just want to relax. And every time I touched that, I got to either it's too strong and it's going to require no one wanting to do anything, or it does nothing and it's just going to hurt people who use it. So I'm like, okay, let's just go with aggressive and peaceful. Let's not really touch them too much. If you're being aggressive, let's give them a little bit more thievery magic damage when they do it. That seems like a reasonable thing. If you're already aggressive on attacks, why aren't your magic and thievery ops harder? And then peaceful, if you're already in peaceful, why don't we reduce how much damage you take from losses? Because, hey, I don't want to fight. Just come do whatever. And let's give a little bit of wizard production, because if you really are behind in WPA, instead of having to run 80% guilds, maybe you run 50% guilds and use peaceful a little bit to get your wizards caught back up. And I know Scraz has a little bit different opinion on the stances, so I'll let him go next.
Sorry, you actually fixed my biggest issue that you had with peaceful. So at one point, for the audience, peaceful also had science production in the plus 15%, and I think any stance that allows plus science production when the meta for at least in the top kingdom is to get ahead of everyone else and then pump is bad for the game, or bad for the idea that other people going for like winning wars and catching up to them can ever challenge them. And so the fact that you changed that means I'm mostly happy with the stances now, if I'm honest.
Yeah, excellent. I don't really like to, I don't always weigh in on balance things when it comes to, stances and racials and personalities and stuff like that. That's really what the council is there for. A lot of different people, a lot of different opinions, different play styles, and different understandings of the game. And so I like staying out of the balancing of some of those things. All right, so changes to war based on the number of provinces in your kingdom. So the way this came about, there were two things, and again, it's not everything that's here now. There was more in the proposed and revised changes. So two different aspects of it. There's the war score that you're awarded that your kingdom is awarded when the opponent surrenders to you. And then there's also a war win tier bonus that provides additional resources, some additional resources from the war win. And the calculation, the war win tier bonus is, as it says here, so it's 5% for each tier that can stack up to, actually no, this. Okay, so we didn't write in here. So it stacks up to 50%. So you can have up to 10 of these. There's 10 tiers that stack up to 50%. And so you can increase the amount of bonuses that you get from a war win up to 50%. What this is talking about is reducing basically having the opposite effect, reducing the amount of bonus that you get from a war win if you are not 25 players in your kingdom. The game is designed to be played at 25 players, and whenever there are certain changes that are made, we always want to focus changes on incentivizing kingdoms being at 25. And so what this does is effectively penalize kingdoms that are below 25 players, but not too much to the point where we wanted to have a max there of 25% reduction so that it's not a uh, it's not a
Also,
debilitating. Uh,
I'd like to point out here that if the majority of kingdoms are still 22 players, this affects them all equally. It's not going to affect your ability to beat other 22 kingdoms in whatever score you're going for.
sure, but it won't allow you to compete with kingdoms that may be 25 that may be warring at 25, and so that's kind of the point. But it does have that effect if you are going to stay at 22 and you're only going to fight other 22 kingdoms size kingdoms of 22 players, then you're all in the same boat there. Certainly, but yeah. So that's what this is. This is the opposite of the bonus. The bonus will still be there for being in the tiers, but this stacking bonus this is calculated at the start of the war. How many provinces were in the kingdom uh, there, and then so this other one is the war score. So dealing with the war score, um, whether you are 25 or not, you're getting a certain amount of score taken away based on the amount of provinces that you have in the kingdom at the start of that war. And that carries over to the end of age calculation that is done based on your opponent. So the war score formula is has a lot of factors in it, and it does take into account the strength of your opponents, uh, the strength of your opponent's war schedule. So if you fight a lot of kingdoms that do a lot of warring throughout the age, and they're fighting other good kingdoms, and they're winning, then you're going to have a whole lot more score than a kingdom that is fighting weaker kingdoms or kingdoms that are going to war once or twice in the age and not do much anything else. So it basically incentivizes you to fight good kingdoms, fight other kingdoms that are going to war a lot throughout the age, and to do well. So what this does is it penalizes you for not having a full kingdom as well. And then this other part here, provinces created or reset during war will have a uh, restriction on the ability to send aid and donate to dragons for the first 24 hours after they leave beginner protection. Part of the issue there is provinces that are started during war have 72 hours of beginner protection where they are untouchable, and they don't start with soldiers or credits or anything like that, but they've got 72 hours, so they have a lot of time to generate a lot of resources. And what has been seen is these provinces would create an enormous amount of resources, come out of their beginner protection, and be able to fund entire dragons on their own, or be able to send a lot of aid to other provinces that may be in need. So, and
I'd
that
like to point out something at this point as well. And I don't know if it's something we need to address in the future, but a kingdom won the Honor Crown. At least I think so, because the results obviously aren't out. But based on last known information, a kingdom won the Honor Crown this age by adding 2 provinces in vacation mode right at the end of age to overtake the number 1 position. So, like, abusing provinces in protection and that has been something that I've personally wanted to try and change with my take on changes. Um, Unfortunately, if something good exists, people will find ways to abuse it. So I know it's not always something that you can address in a good way, but like it kind of hit like a chart defining thing in Sage.
yeah, um, it's always possible to have players join. I mean, I understand that they probably invited those players, but the having not a full kingdom, players can always join. So it is what it is. It's I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call it an abuse. They were open slots and they invited players in.
Oh, and I'm not here to go on record saying it's abuse or whatever. I'm just pointing out that because it ties in with this as well. Like with provinces being created during the war, being able to influence that war to such a huge degree, right?
Mhm.
So I'm like, maybe this is something we can look at in the future, just as just an open discussion and get people maybe on Mugo to give ideas about it as well.
Sure, absolutely. Prasein, did you want to weigh in on any of the war changes here?
I'll just go with generally, all of this stuff is aimed at either reducing abuse or encouraging people to play the way the game is designed. Um, the abuse cases come to the point of like, you know, with the stacking war penalties, it's like if I came out at two people and the two of us and warred another kingdom that was at two people and we exchanged war winds back and forth a whole bunch, um, or scripted in and just lost a whole bunch of wars, you can generate a whole bunch of resources in various ways that are very abusable. The goal is to reduce the abuse. The goal is to get things balanced around the way people play, but we're only a certain amount of people. We only have a certain amount of ideas. We are open to other people giving better suggestions to address some of these issues. Better suggestions are, though, caveated in there are certain things that aren't going to be implemented. Like there is no way that they're going to implement the World of Legends is not only a solo providence and no, there are no such things as kingdoms. That's not what Utopia is. So those aren't really solutions to, well, there's too many people, so let's lower it to one.
Right.
Those things aren't just going to happen.
Yeah.
So
Also, I'd like to point out that the essence of the game is what keeps all us people that have been playing it forever keep coming back. Changing too much and changing the essence of the game, I think, would just kill it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I completely agree. So as we move down to changes to the war completion, Prasein, why don't you walk us through the acre redistribution? And if you want me to open up any of these boxes here,
excellent.
let me know.
Nope, I'm going to conceptually explain what's happening before getting to the exact explanation. So conceptually, what I'm aiming for is changing the way acres are redistributed across the kingdom. Just right now, everybody gets some land, and it's congratulations, you win. You get some resources, you get some science, you get some honor. It's like congratulations. That's fine, but let's mix up how that happens a little bit. I mean, we've spent ages trying to balance end of war ceasefire and war winds to the point of they've basically been balanced and they've basically been stale. So how do we mix this up in a way that doesn't, again, change the spirit of the game or completely ruin player player experience?
Mm.
So effectively, when you either win or lose a war, everything you're getting now is the same things you're going to get. The losing kingdom loses 5% of their land and honor. They get the same specialist credits, the same building credits, the same science bonus. But the extra effect now is, hey, we're going to push everybody together. We're going to do this acre redistribution. To that end, I'll explain the acre redistribution after I explain the winning kingdom. The winning kingdom right now gets the same amount of science as the loser. They get an extra little science that's modified by their war score. They get an extra little scientist modified by their war score. Because right now, when you win, you get one scientist. One scientist can't be modified by a war score. In the same way, when it's one dude, you get what, 1.1 dude? Well, yeah, but we're lowering that to you get half a dude that's modified. You get the same 5% of the enemy kingdom's honor goes across all people, but I bumped up the honor per province a little bit just because I think that there's going to be plenty of times where there weren't a lot of princes. Let's let everybody get just a little bit extra honor added in there.
200 honor per province
Then,
is more than a little bit, by the
yeah.
way.
Well, it was what, 30 more providence, 30 more honor per province than what was currently being done,
I think it was
but
100.
now it's modified by war score.
I think it was 100 each
Um,
before.
100 each? Okay.
That's-
I thought it was 170, but I put in a little bit more. Then,
We'll see how it goes.
right now, when you win, you get 5% of your enemy's land, and whatever land you are, 5% of that you get as a war win bonus modified by the score. So effectively, you're getting about 10% land, and only part of that is modified by your war score. That's a little vague, and it almost incentivizes you. The harder you beat your opponent, the bigger your win, but you already beat the person. So why would I give you an extra win for beating them harder? You're beating them harder is in and of itself your win. So because only half those acres were modified by your war score, and now all of them are going to be, I said you just get, you generate 10% of the losing kingdom's land, which it goes into that acre redistribution, and that 10% generation is being modified by your war score. So effectively, if you lose, 5% of your land gets redistributed. If you win, 5% of your land gets redistributed, and 10% of the enemy land gets redistributed. Now, explaining the redistribution is I have a few charts. So the easiest way to pull up the chart is if you pull up example 3. If you want to open that up, David.
Sure.
The third one. Okay. Now, I would be able to see that, but effectively what is happening when you win is, say I beat a kingdom that was at 12,000 acres. So my win, so we only had one, was 1,200 acres, and I'm having 5% of my land redistributed. So in this example, I have a kingdom at 13,250 acres at various levels of pool at various sizes. Well, 5% of 13,250 is 662.5 acres, which will be rounded, but I just listed the half to make it easy. And 1,200 acres is 10% of your enemy land. So about 1,800 acres now is being redistributed onto the lowest provinces first. So the first thing that's done is everybody in the kingdom loses 5% of their land. That 5% gets moved into pool, which I'll discuss in a second. But whatever your size is then, those 1,800 acres that we generated that's being redistributed get moved onto your smallest province and pushes that up until you catch up to the next one. So in this case, even though each of the provinces on the lowest end lost 5%, that 150 acre guy gets all the acres until he hits 500 acres. Then the 500 acre guy and the 150 acre guy get all the remaining acres until you catch up to the 600 acre guy, and so forth until all those 1,800 acres are redistributed. So in this case, the guy at 1,000 lost his 5%. He gained his pool or redistribution that created the pool. So he lost his 5%. It's now 950. And everybody who was smaller than him got all the acres that were being awarded via war win and redistribution. And now everybody is tiny. Everybody tiny got pushed to 941. So I'll go to then how the pool impacts this and how the redistribution.
Which one?
When you end the war, everyone gets at least 100 acres of pool or 5% of their land. So the guy who's at 2,500 acres, 5% of 2,500 is 125. In theory, 125 acres then are taken from him and moved into his pool. However, in this case, he has maximum pool already. So instead of increasing his pool above 1,000, whether his pool was 1,000 or 1,500, it's not getting added. It instantly explores, and over his next explore schedule, he will get that 125 acres back. Now, the guy who is also 2,500 acres but had a pool lost 5% of his land, the same. Now he's down to the same 2,375, but he didn't have max pool, so he gains 125 acres of pool, increasing his pool. And the 2,000 acre guy had some amount of pool that was under 1,000, but the 100-acre award that he would get, losing 5% of his land, actually increased his pool over 1,000. So he would get his pool set to 1,000 and get 50 acres exploring because he lost 100 acres naturally. So he's now 1,900 acres and has 50 additional acres in his explore pool and 50 additional acres that are exploring. So innately, that's how it works with one kind of discussion as to why do this. We do this because, well, one, it helps you recover at the bottom end, and in theory, top kingdoms who get really big when they war would never spend pool on their low end. They'll just attack everybody smaller than them. Well, now, hey, you won all your war win, recovered for all your small people, and now they're not attacking anybody small. I mean, it's not going to be the case that they have no targets, but they'll have less targets, less people to attack, less people to grief. In addition, the smaller kingdoms who might not want to be growing have their largest provinces shrink a little bit. Now, I know people might say, hey, everybody's pushed together. I wanted that big guy. Well, he either explored back everything he lost for free, or he got his pool added. Dump your resources on him. We've changed the way you spend your resources in End of War Ceasefire from all resources go to recovering the small end to if you want to adjust your kingdom makeup, spend it on your top end. Now, End of War Ceasefire also got buffed a little bit because of the draft rate, which we can talk about, but there's no reason why, if you really want your setup to look a certain way, you shouldn't have to spend your resources to make it look that way. Now we've just changed where you're spending it. Instead of looking like I don't want a bunch of small people, you're going to look and say, I actually want a bunch of big people. That's kind of the goal and the changes summarized. And I'll push it on to Scraz and David if they'd like to comment.
For me personally, I'm a bit worried about how it will affect hearing, but outside of that, I honestly want to just see it in action before I give a proper breakdown and opinion of it, because I really honestly, without seeing it, don't know the effects it'll have. This is one of those changes where I'm pretty neutral, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think I think it's going to be an interesting change. That's for sure. With the auto explore, if you're at the 1,000 acre maximum, if you're it's just going to be interesting to see the bottom end of all these kingdoms getting pushed up, quite a bit. So that's going to be fun to see, how people react to that and how kingdoms, handle it. Because in the past, there's been a lot of, End of War Ceasefire is not only a time to, recover and pump and get ready, but it's also gives everybody an opportunity to create the different tiering. And I think that's what you're talking about, Scraz, the tiering inside the kingdom, so that when you fight another kingdom, you can properly, chain and take players down in a certain way more effectively if you have players at different levels. And what this is effectively going to do is it's going to push up the bottom of every kingdom, every kingdom that wars anyway, so that there's no longer, smaller players that are going to be fighting smaller players within, outside of war and other stuff. So it's going to lift a lot of kingdoms and a lot of kingdoms up into, maybe not into tiers of competition that they're not used to, but I think it's just it's going to create, a floor size of provinces instead of having a bigger
On
spread.
that note, could I have a small interjection here?
Yeah, of course.
So one thing that it definitely does is that it makes that if you want to ladder chain properly, it means that you don't have to do more manipulation with pool inside the kingdom between wars, or during end of war ceasefire, for instance. So it will affect ability of laddering for those that don't know how to set up those ladders. but I'm not necessarily sure that that's a bad thing either. It's just something that I want people to be aware of, that the way a good chain works is you have networks at different acres going down, right? And you want to make sure that you're always hitting within the 5% network on all the way down the chain to ladder them and do the most damage. And this will impact that without manipulation internally. So I feel like telling the average viewer that they might want to think as leaders or as kingdoms to, set up those ladders using full during end or ceasefire or whatever to chain more effectively might be something that they look at, because this will impact laddering.
Yeah, I'll even reiterate that to the point of one of the, what was it, the Great Utopian Wars was everybody starts at the exact same size acres, and then we ward after ward. The kingdom that won that literally intra-attacked during ceasefire and planning to set up ladders. Their top few people gained, a couple, like 100 or 200 acres, but they actually took land from their kingdom destroyed on their lower end so they could chain more effectively and win harder and faster. And that laddering is very strong, can be very effective depending on if you're nightmare chaining or how you're doing your hits. And effectively, what this means, how this has been redistributed, is you're going to need to push more acres into your upper tier to get that ladder in the same way you used to be able to have it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a good thing, but it is resources you need to expend if you want your kingdom to be set up to be perfectly spread. Where before, since you had a whole bunch of small people, you could let your ladder just naturally on the low end kind of scale up. Now you've got a whole bunch of people all set at that low end as a low end cap.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how kingdoms handle that, the spreading of their provinces when they have basically the bottom end of their kingdom all exactly the same acres. And depending on how many are there, it's in the scenario here you've got 10 provinces, all different sizes to start, and then now you have basically 5 of them all at the same exact size after the redistribution. So it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be very interesting. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, also, I just want to make sure everyone's clear. I'm not saying that removing the laddering that's naturally occurring is a bad change. I just want kingdoms to think about it so that they can get the best results from these changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I think this is gonna definitely be something that people experiment with and test with this age, and like how the heck are we gonna deal with this, and then learn from this age and implement new strategies for next age. I mean, this is something that will affect gameplay for several ages before people really figure out how to perfect and really do it well. So as we kind of move on here, the war conclusion bonuses or resources that are provided to both kingdoms and things. So there's not much change here. I think Persane, you touched on the bonuses that the winning kingdom will receive. That's somewhat different from what has been in the past. Specifically being that right now, winning kingdoms receive 48 ticks of science books. Or it was modified by your war win tier. That is no longer going to work that way right now. A winning kingdom will get the 24 ticks that both kingdoms get, not affected by your war win tier bonus. And the winning kingdom will receive 12 ticks of bonus books that will be affected by the war win tier adjustment modification there. And then, of course, the scientist changed from you getting a full scientist to just increasing your current generation by you know, 0.5. So it's not 50%, it's 0.5, however you want to look at it. And if that gives you a scientist, you get a scientist. And if you go, so if you're at 0.9 and you get the 0.5, you will get a scientist and be at 0.4. So you don't just lose everything over the getting of the scientist. And then I think this is also new here. Additional free building credits based on your province land. So in addition to everybody getting credits, everybody gets 200% of the median size credits. Winning kingdom will also get your province size in building credits.
Yeah, the reason for that was actually the last time I played Genesis, I realized I was slightly bigger than everybody else. And it's like, hey, I literally don't have enough building credits to raise and rebuild as a winner. And it's like, come on, I should at least get enough to rebuild half my land into an end-of-war ceasefire column.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Yeah. First world utopia problems there, right? Being the biggest one in your kingdom, not having enough credits to raise your land at war.
He just wanted to brag.
Yep, I know. Flexing a little bit over there. So we have a couple building changes here. Watchtowers are no longer going to, so the auto fail that you get from watchtowers will not impact intel espionage ops. The thieves dens is changing from 4% to 3.6%. So this should have gone in last age. It didn't make it in last age, and it is going to be in now. And we have a wonderful new operation, Spy on Explore Pool. So it's actually going to be called Spy on Exploration, and it's going to provide you with the current size of your target's explorable acres. How many acres can they explore? It will give you the costs for soldiers per acre and gold per acre. And I think oh, showing where I'm looking. So I do think that is going to require a little bit of explanation there, Parsane. Why is this so important?
So the biggest reason, obviously, is um, everybody now has to interact with the pool. As the pool grows, as you're gaining daily free acres, everybody's going to interact with it. You really do need to know if you're going to fight a kingdom who is every single person in that kingdom is at 990 explore pool acres, and you're about to go to war, and you're going to attack and chain, and then all of a sudden, 5 hours into war, every single person in that kingdom starts getting 2 acres explored for free. And at 24 hours into war now, or 29 hours into hours into war, all those people are getting effectively 2 acres a tick for free. Well, if I was going to fight a person and I knew every person in their kingdom is going to start growing slowly-ish, because by the time in the age where we hit that, it'll be slow relative to your size, but just going to grow for free. They're going to be building econ in war for free that I might not be able to attack. I might not be able to control, and I might not be able to even deal with this massive growing kingdom at 50 acres a tick. And I need to know that. I need to be aware of the kingdom I'm fighting and what's going to happen. Now, in addition to that, since everybody's going to be interacting with the Explore pool, things that I have done specifically is, hey, I'm about to declare war. I have a whole bunch of resources. I'm going to dump 400 acres of my pool and then go into war because my thief mages got hit pre-war down some. So that is important, and knowing how much the kingdom can explore means I need to know their gold and soldier costs. Explore formula is not uncomplicated, and it is not known perfectly. So I can't just, hey, this is the person's size, this is how many resources they have, know exactly what they're getting at and how big they can get. So I need to know how big they can actually get, and I need to be able to get their golden soldiers. And for people who like to do the mathy stuff, like to explore explore the nuances of the game, getting soldier and gold costs at somebody's size should allow them to um, get closer to recreating and sleuthing out the formula. Almost all the formulas that exist on the wiki are because somebody spent the time going in and saying, I have all this data, what's the formula? And having somebody's size, somebody's gold, and soldier cost should get us eventually closer to, as a player base, being able to really determine that formula.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Scraz? The importance of being able to see pool.
As someone who often goes for province crown, yeah, it's a nice change rather than me having to calculate it using bots and goddamn Excel spreadsheets. So I kind of like it.
Yeah. Now we just need a spy on wizards, right?
Don't even get us started, man.
It's spoiler alert. It will never happen. Spy on wizards will never happen. But as we continue, night strike damage increasing significantly, so 25% more damage to soldiers. Night strike is already significantly powerful against soldiers, and it will be even more powerful. And the reason behind that, mainly, as Persane has explained, to me anyway, is that with what we'll see in just a little bit, with draft rates being increased drastically, being able to produce a whole lot more soldiers very quickly. It just goes to reason that we should be able to kill them more easily with Night Strike. So that's kind of the simple thought on that. And then we have some
Exactly.
rituals here. So do you guys want to talk about the rituals a little bit, and what you changed and
Yeah, the only thing I changed on rituals is expedient. Expedient used to have plus draft rate plus building efficiency. I boosted draft rate, which we'll discuss in a bit, across the board, and it would just get absurd if you also were able to boost that even farther with a ritual. So I just was like, okay, well, what else do we need on expedient that still makes it viable for typical end of war ceasefire or a typical I'm sitting out of war, but I don't really have a lot of threats and I'm trying to pump a little bit. You want the extra building efficiency, that's nice. And okay, here's a little bit cheaper draft just to help you out a little bit. So that's really the only change I made to rituals. Rituals are something that could use a mix up, but we try to limit how much stuff is mixed up. Even if it looks like a lot's been done, we don't want to change everything to the point of overwhelming players age to age. It's already hard when you take a 2 or 3 age break and come back and hit 3 or 4 ages worth of mix ups. Not every player needs that every age.
Yeah, I don't think there's much to say about rituals. I think Expedient might be a little weak now, but it's still absolutely necessary as your first one in End of War Ceasefire. So, like, it's fine.
Okay. So as we continue down, so this is a bunch of changes here to the way taxes are handled on province with aid. So the previous tax cap max was 98%. When you received so much aid, the maximum tax that would be possible was 98%. That is being reduced now to 80%, so the maximum will be 80%. Land significantly increased, so it was 500 GC per acre that was sent in aid. That is increasing from 500 to 1500, so that's a very significant increase. This is a rather large change here. So land now subject to taxes, and it was purposeful that we did not tax land in the past when we implemented uh, the ability to trade acres. It was on purpose that we absolutely did not want to tax land, but now here we have it. We are taxing land. So if your province has a tax rate for receiving aid, then land will be taxed based on that tax rate. The rate at which land is destroyed when it is sent through aid is going to be reduced. So you were losing half. Now you're only going to lose 1/3. So you'll receive more, but it will be taxed if you are getting taxed. And this is also a fairly large or significant change to mechanics. This has been a long-standing thing. It's been in the game for quite a long time. Multi-attack protection. That when you reach a certain level of multi-attack protection, meaning if you've been hit a whole lot, your tax rate, no matter what it was, would max at 15%. So this would allow for, if you were getting hit a whole lot, getting raised, and you were about to die, or you lost all your military, like all these things from getting hammered with a lot of attacks, you could receive a ton of aid and not be overly taxed by, because if you're getting hit a lot, your net worth is likely going down, and now as you receive aid, it's just going to be taxed enormously, and you're basically not going to get much of the aid that you need to rebuild or not die. And so what that effectively did is it allowed your kingdom to help you recover, withstand the attacks that were taking place, and not lose your province that you had worked for the whole age. This being taken out, because it's being replaced with this part here. If you're a really small province in the kingdom, so this is less than 25% of the median acres in the kingdom. So it's a very small. If you are quite small in the kingdom, your maximum aid tax is going to be 15%. So it's somewhat of a replacement there. Again, the idea is if you're receiving a lot of hits, you're becoming really small, and if you're really small, the maximum tax rate is going to be in effect there. So it somewhat accomplishes the same idea there, without allowing for certain other advantages that you might be able to utilize if under certain circumstances that we won't go into here. And then, of course, increasing the trade balance decay to about 10% per 24 ticks per game month, to roughly 50%. It's a little bit more than 50%, I think, over the real life week, while not in war. So during war, trade balance will not decay, but outside of war, about 10% per month.
Yep, and I'll go to rationale again. So,
Sure.
tax cap. Well, there was no particular rationale for lowering it other than 98% seems very harsh. Let's lower it a little bit, see what happens, and see if it's abused. If it's abused, we can go back and we can address the abuse, but it just seems overly harsh to penalize someone to the point of 2% of, if I've been getting a ton of aid and I'm really small, it's like, do I really need to send someone $50 million gold for them to get 1 million in aid if they're kind of small to recoup a little bit? That seems harsh. To that end, land was kind of very cheap to send back and forth, and when you didn't have tax on it, if you were trying to boost someone, you would just tax the hell out of everybody and then send the land for free. So I was like, okay, let's make, since we're requiring people to interact with the pool now, let's make land a little bit more of a resource that's looked after in your pool and give a value to it. 1,500 seemed kind of reasonable, and I'll skip the cap because I think David did a good job, but I'll go to trade balance. Right now, according to best calculations in the wiki, your trade balance will decay in 11 and a half real days. I pushed that down from 11 and a half real days to about a week. So you're getting what, like, 30 to 40% faster, but not decaying when you're in war. Under the assumption of, hey, we're at war, we're aiding if I see a ton of aid, real life war flowing from one person to another trying to boost them, I'm going to start attacking that aid. Now, we don't want to attack the aid other than explosions, but it doesn't really make sense that, hey, we've been feeding this guy aid and aid and aid and aid, and we're at war, and all of a sudden now he's taxed less because of a day change, but we're still feeding him aid. We're still at war. Nothing, the situation hasn't really changed. It doesn't really make sense to have that mechanism be there of other than we're at war, so these kind of things are static. It's a little bit easier to predict. You want to funnel in resources, you're funneling it into aid. But again, then outside of war, 11 and a half days to hit 50% is pretty harsh. We're not decaying in war. Let's really push that to a reasonable speed of a week to hit 50%. I think that's a reasonable number to get to.
Sure, certainly. Any comments on the
Scrat,
taxes there, Scraz?
I think it's both better than the old tax system and more abusable. But I like the caveats you put in for like median acres and the 15% to stop like the while still stopping map abuse. Yeah, I'd like to play with it a bit basically. So I'll give more thoughts on that after the age.
Sure, wonderful. We mentioned draft rates already. Wanting to get more soldiers in the game quicker, increasing the actual rate at which soldiers are drafted in, but not changing the cost. So all that'll be the same. Now, as we get into races, this is where I'm gonna
If
leave this with
if
you
I
guys.
can, I'd just like to make yeah, there is one thing I definitely want to bring up about that, and that is that at BUFF's end of war ceasefire, people will be drafting way later,
Oh
which
yeah.
means more tickets at max income,
Mhm.
and I want people to be aware of that just going forward. Like, I don't care either way. I actually like slightly higher values. I thought the draft time was a little low. They've been doubled though, more not just like pushed up. So be aware that your end of war ceasefires you draft later, and you have more ticks at max income. So going like high banks, high homes, like the stuff you'd usually do, you will have a lot of excess gold. Use it.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll certainly change the way you can do an end of war ceasefire. Um, it's yeah, it's definitely gonna be something that your strategy guys are gonna be figuring some things out, running some spreadsheets for sure to figure out maximum capabilities and potential and what you can do with that for sure. Put a whole lot more income in the game, as if end of war ceasefire was not strong enough already. So yeah, as we get to the races here, I don't really do a lot with again the balancing of these things. There are some uh, unique things that are new to the game that we see on some of the races here. So I'll let Persane and Skraz take over here as leaders of their kingdoms and in the past and doing a lot of stuff with strategy, crafting for um, how to build a kingdom and what their theme is going to be and what their goals are going to be. This definitely your wheelhouse here. So Persane, why don't you start us off?
Okay, so again, we had a decent mix up on mechanics without necessarily fundamentally altering the game. To that end, if we had no real mix up on races, it'd be easier to see the mechanisms, but it would feel like, well, why I'm just running the same thing. And so you want to mix up the races again, change things a little bit. Um, Generally, what I was looking at was um, we had a few races that were a little weak, a few races that were a little strong, a few that were relatively balanced. And I tried to buff a little bit on the weaker ones. I tried to not nerf the stronger ones at much. And I tried to play with um, specifically for the races not having an innate WPA or TPA bonus. You don't have an innate WPA or TPA bonus, it allows you fundamentally to be a little bit more creative with your provenance, but I still wanted things like elf to be focused on magic, dark elves to be focused on magic, fairies to have some bonus to thievery and magic, halflings to be your default thief, whatever. So I still tried to focus those type of balances there. And starting with avians, I personally thought avians were a little under, but not significantly. So really what I did was just give them the ambush immunity, saying, okay, all I really need is a little push to get a little bit more, a little bit safer on their offense, a little bit more econ focused. But I did, because tactician was relatively strong last stage and it wasn't horribly nerfed. I didn't want to push up avian so much that it made the default to be avian tactician and everybody has to run 8-hour attack times.
Yeah, so on that note, before we went live, Hussein said that he was very aware of burnout, and having Avian as a default pick, like, really just makes you burn out quicker. So that was his thinking behind them maybe not being the strongest in this lineup.
That's correct. I generally am aware of burnout, and I have no problems with people who want to do a ton of fast times with attacking. I just think that avian generally should not be a default. This is the strongest because it makes every kingdom then have to run it and burn out.
Yeah,
And
avian.
you have any
Let's
other
move
thoughts
on.
on avian?
Do I have any thoughts? I think.
Oh, Scraz, any other thoughts? Two? Okay, I'll move to Dark Elf.
Yeah.
So, looking at Dark Elf, um, to me, they were a little under where everybody else was. They weren't too bad, but they were a little under. So, one of their issues that I saw was Dark Elf is a little hard to pump. They rely on your elite defense, so one attack and you just lost a ton of money. WPA is always going to be an issue. So I'm like, okay, 20% birth rates isn't necessarily that big. Remove that. And what makes sense here? How can I buff them without buffing them as much as into Oblivion? I know it's some. I thought, okay, well, they already have reduced spell costs. And one of the things that I liked in the past was some kind of building bonus. Um, Looking innately at, okay, if I'm running guilds, I'm running 20% guilds to get max duration. That then requires me to run at least, with my spell costs, 10% towers. So if I'm doing 10% towers and 20% guilds, well, if I merge those two buildings, I can just run 20% guilds, and then I now have 10% additional. They would have now 20. They would no longer need towers and would have more runes than they need. So to keep that kind of ratio the same, I'm like, okay, well, how about if guilds produce half towers? So now your 20% guilds completely replaced your 10% towers. And in theory, if I double up to, say, 40% guilds, well, that replaces 20% towers. Because if you just allow it to be 1-to-1, your guilds now massively produce too many runes. But you already have half costs, so you don't really need 1-to-1 towers, and you don't really need to run 40% towers unless you're aiding out in war and trying to be the tower bank. Well, I don't want Dark Elf to innately be a tower bank and pumping WPA, so let's just give them that little, okay, here's some building space that they can run now while at war, while still getting some free towers.
So I actually think combining guilds and towers is extremely strong. I'm not sure it's necessarily a good thing to have over multiple ages, but like I said, a big change up is good every now and again. Um, as it reads now, Dark Elf is very, very powerful. It is extremely strong. It has good defense. It has good offense. It has insane space savings because in royalty kingdoms especially, they want to run high towers on their casters for a long time. This gives you a heap of runes with that you can like fix your trade balance with and stuff like that, while having access to things like Blizzard, which is underused but incredibly powerful, and Chastity and Mage's Fury. Like not to mention visibility, you could even like throw in some thieves with this thing. I think it's a very very good pick if you want a mage centric pick.
And I don't disagree. It's a very good pick. I probably judge slightly differently that guilds have towers. I don't think that is innately as much of a boost as Scraz probably um, would value that at, and that's a um, fundamental difference to the point of multiple people. And Scraz has said they're probably at the upper end. You might not want to do that much. I still think that this is a good way to go, and it truly does determine that they're a little too powerful. That's why we have age to age changes, and we'll work from there.
Also, having a difference of opinion is perfectly fine. We're not here to go my way is the right way or anything like that. Having difference of opinions is fine. If it turns out that it's perfectly fine, then it's perfectly fine. I'm happy to be wrong on this one.
Yeah, and if it turns out to be very, very strong, I think one of the reasons why I try to keep a lot of things on the stronger end is if it turns out to be really, really strong and turns out to be literally age defining any of these changes, um, I would hope that it doesn't impact player fun. And every once in a while, having something that is, hey, I was the strongest, isn't necessarily something that's terrible for the game.
Yeah, no, I can definitely agree with that. And I'm not sure that it's super powerful, but it is definitely it comes with a lot of side effect bonuses that I think could be really good. But interesting.
It's just space saving in general is very, very good when you've got a lot of buildings you want to run.
Yeah.
And that is the benefit. You can now maybe fit forts, for instance, into a build with this.
Well, so Scraz, for example, you say it's a huge space savings. So with them producing 50% of the rate of normal towers, I'm not sure you really get the space savings that you're thinking. Like if you wanted
Well, okay, so mid to late age, you only really need to run like on a castle with good science. You only really need to run, maybe 10% towers, right?
Mhm.
You always want to run more than 20% guilds. So you're saving about 10% plus trade balance in this is the way I look at it. And 10% isn't a huge deal, but if you put that 10% into say fours or thief dens or whatever, it gives your province an entirely new
fact that it can get you up
angle to it. So you can become, a night striker, or you can become unbreakable, or you can become, it gives another angle, and that's why space saving is important. It's also why dwarves, I think, when we get to them, I'll explain, are actually a lot more powerful than a lot of people realize. I think they're a counter meta pick, but I also think they're incredibly hard to play. We'll get to them later, but I think Dark Elf is a very, very good pick if you're going the magic route.
Yeah. So I can definitely agree with that thought process. And I guess it just depends on how you like you said. If it's a
Yep.
mage pick, then it certainly goes that route. And if your core is running a lot of guilds or running a lot of wizards, then it's certainly going to help in that sense. But I mean, I think it will take some time for it to produce that space savings ability.
Oh, absolutely. Like straight out of like protection, yeah, they're a lot worse than mid and late age. Absolutely.
Sure.
Okay, and that gets us to dwarf. I'm going to flat out say, so everybody's aware, I personally struggle a little bit with BE as a bonus. I can understand the merging buildings and I have 10% of something else. What does 10% do? But something like BE is a little bit harder because it's not really 30% new land. It's all my land is more effective, and now everything is getting bumped up, and I have some additional land to distribute that when I'm drafted is more like maybe 15%. When I'm underdrafted, is actually more like 40% because of science. So it's a very difficult concept to get right. To that end, I can admit when I'm not quite balancing dwarf where it is, but I will note that I thought dwarf was a little weak, and when I talked to other people, especially with some of the other buffs to the other races, dwarf was not the strongest this age, so it needed something, and a little bit of the military seemed to be a way to go instead of bumping up its specs, bumping up its elite, trying to give it a new bonus. Just like, okay, look, dwarf is just a little bit stronger overall. That seems like a good place to start, and didn't get a ton of feedback that it was too powerful or too weak. And I'll let Scraz go on his thoughts specifically.
Okay, so in simulations that I've done, dwarf actually ends up mid late age as incredibly efficient and one of the highest offenses, like even more than undead and human. We'll get to human later, but building efficiency, something most people don't realize is it's not additive. It multiplies with science. So when you get plus 30% building efficiency, you're actually adding a 1.3 modifier. And when you add a 1.3 modifier to your science, which then also multiplies out, it can become very, very efficient and very, very powerful. That being said, it is an incredibly hard race to play because it requires a lot of investment, a lot of smart tweaking with exact percentages on buildings. And, I don't think it's broken, especially not with some of the other races in here, but I think it is a very strong counter meta pick. And if you're a good enough player, I think you could make this absolutely sing. And actually, I really like where it's at because of that, because I think the smarter players will be able to use dwarf very well. Also, the plus 5% ME, again, it's a multiplier once you add science. You're thinking about stuff like that. Late age dwarves are going to become absolute beasts. I don't think they're better than human or undead, but as a counter meta pick and using buildings to your advantage, I think they're very strong. And I actually really love that the spot they're in terms of other races, because I think it's, again, if you're smart and you want to use it, you can be off meta and still do very well.
Yeah, I think for me, 25% building efficiency is kind of the limit where they're still manageable. Anything over 25%, and they just, no matter what else they have, they're usually really, really strong. And so having the 30% building efficiency is, it has just the side effects of how it works and how it gets affected by science and other things, like Persane was mentioning there. With it's very it fluctuates a lot with the draft rate, and 30% is such a big bonus. Um, I don't ever like to put more than 25%. Otherwise, it just gets silly. So yeah, but it'll be fun. I mean, I think it's what Scraz was saying there is, it can be really, really good if you're really, really smart. I just think it gets better the smarter you are at using them. I think the ME bonus, the military efficiency bonus, and the building efficiency bonus make it really easy to play on the lower end of how good are you at the game, and it just makes it that much better the better you are at the game.
Well, that's a good point. The floor is actually quite high in that it's easy to play,
Right.
but the ceiling is also extreme as well.
Certainly. Yeah, but it's fun.
Cool. That'll move us to Elf. So, Elf and Halfling both lost their WPA or TPA bonus. So, Elf specifically lost their WPA bonus. However, they still need to be magic focused. So, first thing I did was I said, okay, a 25% WPA bonus is about how much population? It's like, okay, 5% seems to be a reasonable sweet spot, even though late age it can couple with science, and early age you really don't have enough WPA for this to be there. So this is going to make early age elf very a little bit stronger as far as utility that is not a mage. And late age, if you really push your population up, if you're not going for the super mage, again, and you might have a little bit more utility, a little bit more power, but if you're going for a super mage, actually 5% population is barely covering that WPA. Well, innately having WPA, if I have to run raw now, I need to generate wizards faster. So I gave it a wizard generation faster button. In addition, I have to build up this huge raw number, well, a couple massacres or some attack wizards, those are going to hit like a truck because I've got this huge raw number that I can attack. And I'm like, okay, if I'm giving it all these things to address WPA and population, it's like, well, how about I make it just a little bit more tanky instead of like the wage bonus? And instead of explore costs, what else can I do? Because land is a little bit more free. Instead of addressing explore, some kind of pump hit. So I'm like, okay, massacre and attack wizards. Let's just reduce all damage a little bit from massacre, because now your elf, if you only have just enough WPA, takes a little bit more to hurt it. It's a little bit safer from attack wizards. It allows you to keep that mage there, and then I need some penalty. And one of the big things that elf is nice to do is I boost it real quick because I had the D-specs. And because it's relatively cheap when I just train D-specs as a thief mage, and it has production bonuses, let's give it a little bit harder time to pump and a little bit longer to train. So I increased its training time. So if you naturally would train in 16 hours, now you're training in 24 hours. If you naturally train in 19 hours, you're still only going 24 hours. I didn't want to mess with the system and have only one race that could have a 2-day training time or something. But let's just make them train a little bit slower to try and fundamentally keep elf what it was, but it gets there now in a new way.
Yeah, so elf. I think it's in a fairly good spot. I think that the 12-point special on the specialist with a 5% population bonus does mean that you can potentially wall these easier than some of the other races. And the wall meta is a thing. It always will be a thing. I can't see a way to really get rid of it without making attackers too broken. But overall, I actually don't hate this. If I was going to pick a mage, it wouldn't be elf, it would be dark elf. But if you did play this well and managed to make sure they're at the top end of your kingdom, you could easily create walls with these, and walls just win. So, the population bonus with the 12-point death spec, with good wizards, yeah, you can create a wall with that. That's what I'd look to be doing if I was playing elf.
Yeah, and elf moves a little bit away from maybe being the dominant pure mage to being a little bit more hybrid ability, because if you don't have that raw WPA, you now have the population bonus and the extra D-spec, such that if you're running the ability to attack, your military is now going to be a little bit stronger, and getting safe is going to be a little bit easier.
Yeah, very good.
Oh, move on.
Yep, to fairy. So fairy is basically the default. I was trying to balance everything around. I know people might disagree. People might think fairy is too weak, too strong, but I think fairy was in a relatively good spot last age, was probably the strongest overall thief mage, and but I did buff attackers a little bit. I changed halfling and elf a little bit, buff dark elf a little bit. So it's like, okay, so fairy maybe needs something. One of the cool things that fairy has is fairy has access to aggression. Soldiers are 3-0. Aggression moves soldiers to 5-0. Fairy also has access to bloodlust, which is a bonus to offense. Fanaticism, a bonus to offense. So you can push those 5-0, those 3-0 soldiers without horses up relatively quickly, such that like soldiers are actually better to attack with than a fairy's elite. And what's said was you have bloodlust, fanaticism. It's like, what are they then to be Fairy being usable as an attacker, maybe using soldiers as one of its main attackers. Well, it's the Warhorse. They already have minus 10% population, and they're tight on their build typically as a no WPA, no TPA race. So how do I get them into a spot where they could maybe occasionally attack with something, maybe have some additional utility? Well, I want to give them horses, but horses are going to just, if they just get horses, it's going to inflate their net worth and even be more damaging. So I'm like, okay, you know what? A small buff then is here's some free horses. No net worth. Here's a number. Here's a number that won't be like running, won't make you basically a rogue needs to attack. Well, this fairy has 200,000 horses. Just rob it, and now every attacker that can steal horses has free horses, or every thief mage that needs horses has free horses. Um, but they still need enough to be able to attack. So it's like, okay, you know what? 15 horses an acre seems to be, it's not quite 20% stables. Relatively rare you need more than 20% stables anyway. So here's a free thing now you can do with Fairy that gives it a little bit of buff, but that's not meaningfully impacting the way Fairy is played. That's kind of the thought with Fairy.
All right, I need to point out two things here. A lot of people have confused this in my private channels. No one seems to read properly, and they don't realize the horses are zero net worth. That's important because otherwise you're going to have inflated net worth fairies getting bottom fed on. So I'd like to point out that that has been addressed. As to your ideas on fairy, I like the ideas. I'm not sure it's playable. The minus 10% population just makes it so tight that you really can't afford to have that much extra room once you add gear, the WPA, TPA, etc., to be able to attack.
Understand, and that's if you want to be a attacker thief mage, it's probably going to be impossible. If you want to be a attacker fairy and not even go into your WPA and TPA, here's a new little free thing. But if you want to get safe in war, be funneled soldiers, now you can do something once you're safe. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tight. It might be a meaningless bonus in almost every situation. That one person, the 10 people who find it fun and find a new use for it, it's something there. And I don't think Fairy is drastically under the other thief mages in the game that I needed to buff those bonuses.
Interesting to see how it plays out. I'm confused at how it'll play out because I don't know how good that 15 horses an acre at zero net worth actually is. Again, I think they want to 10% population. You've got to remember that it's a multiplier as well. Everything in this game multiplies. So, like adding population science to try and counteract that is actually like it's still hurting you. I just don't think it has the space, but I could be wrong.
Cool. Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting to see who gets to play around with that and what they can do with it. I mean,
So then we get to Halfling, and there was a whole bunch of feedback on Halfling, and I took everybody's advice a little bit in this is way too strong, and I'm like, okay, I don't think it's too strong at all, even how people had it before. I thought it was in a good spot, and I can explain in a sec, but because of the feedback, because everybody was saying that I took away at least invisibility, and pulling down invisibility makes it weaker. I think personally, in every way, Halfling is not as good next stage as it was this past stage. This is me looking at things. The reason I think that is I look at it had 25% TPA before, and I removed the 25% TPA bonus on a race that, when it's a rogue, is running 7, 8, 9 raw TPA. There's a huge amount of population that goes into TPA. Giving it the one extra D spec, that the amount of the amount of less D-specs you can run and keep the same defense as last age is not the equivalent population to the TPA that you would need to keep the same TPA. And Thievery Dens and Watchtowers being merged, what effectively that to me was doing is every halfling normally is either going to run Thievery Dens or Watchtowers, or in a few cases wants to run both. If you lose 25% TPA, but you run your Thieves Dens, now your TPA is just innately lower. I would still like to see a halfling as the most focused thief be the safest thief as well on defense, giving it an innate watchtower bonus when you've already hit Thieves Den's effectiveness, when it basically is required to run a Thieves Den on a halfling, to me says, okay, it lost some offensive potential, it now has defensive potential. And the halfling who ran attacker, again, lost a population. You know, it might have only lost for the halfling that ran 4 TPA, might have only lost 1 population from thievery, which it mostly gained back in the D-specs, but it wanted to run Watchtowers and Thieves Dens. It needs to run Watchtowers to be safe from a pure Thief Mage, but it also needs to run Thieves Dens to actually be able to op without having too much effectiveness. Merging those together is a 20% building efficiency for the unique case of the halfling that wanted to run both. And I don't think that overly tunes a halfling that wanted to run both as an attacker, but as a mystic, they didn't really want to run thievery den. They didn't really have the space to run thievery dens anyway. They had to run watchtowers to get safe from enemy rogues. So as a mystic, now they have that little extra little bit of offense. So I boosted them, and I boosted that focus of them, but hitting their thievery overall by lowering their effectiveness. And I know Scraz has a slightly different opinion of that as well, so I'll let him get there.
Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of context before I give my opinion here. So last stage, I actually ran halfling after doing the numbers. And last stage, I ran a cow killer to try and protect our cow. And so it was I finished about 8,000 acres. I had the highest offense in the game. I had more offense than 12,000 acre orcs. I had over 300 ohm as a halfling warrior, and it's purely because the ohm science scales, the population scales. It didn't matter that their elites are on the 11-point offense. Like once you get that type of scaling, and it gets to late age, it's insane. Now, from last age to this age, you've only buffed halfling. So defensive specialists going up to 11, and that, by the way, that was on 12 defense specialists per acre that I got over 300 ohm, over 400 million offense. You know, I can run less on halfling this age because you've upped the defensive specialist points. That on top of just giving them free watchtowers, and like, you know, if you want to do like A/T, but that I don't actually think is as broken as people think it is. I think halfling is going to sing as either a warrior or a heretic. It's just really, really good. The plus 10% population, the quick feet, how much vermin's important, and then the extra, like, you know, point on the defensive specialists. It has a very high ceiling. I admit I don't think the average player could have done it, and I don't mean that as disrespect to the average player, or saying I'm better or anything like that. I'm saying that when you have something that scales like a plus per population bonus, knowing where to invest your science, knowing when to be slow at the early game to make sure you have the right amount of unis, like all of that kind of thing is important. And I don't think scalable races like halfling is necessarily the best pick for someone who doesn't want to spend that time and nuance in building it up. But I will say that halfling is insane as it is. I don't think it's as insane as the next 2 races that are coming up, but I'll personally be running halfling heretics because they're just so good.
And I'll just add, I understand where he's coming from. My experience with trying to do what he did is you can get really good numbers, but high population based attackers don't perform as well long term in a war. And I that would be my default to cool, you got your numbers, now what are you doing with it? And if you aren't doing enough with it to matter, I don't really view that as strong as Scratch does. That said, all of his comments and concerns are things that I tried to look into, tried to mess around with, and I'm willing to be wrong if he can run something that is really that strong.
Yeah. I mean,
But
I think
don't think, and again, because human and orc and dwarf and because of some of the other places we're at with the other races, I don't think that we've gotten to the point where it is game defying unfun.
yeah. But I think also it just comes back to a fundamental difference in play styles, the way that per se you play versus the way that Skraz plays, and the kingdoms are just different.
Yeah, I'm not saying I don't want to say that it's like broken or anything like that. I just think it's very strong, and in war, I also think, like I said, I was running 12 DSPA. Like that's good in war. If you get ahead, you're just ahead. Um, I look, it's I'm not trying to slag off your changes because again, I want everyone to reiterate that I'm coming in and going, okay, this is a shake-up age. Things are going to be buffed, and Persane's like natural inclination is to buff things to be fun rather than nerf things to be balanced. And every now and again, you actually do need that. You need people to be able to come in and enjoy themselves and have a broken age. Like the race ages, I absolutely broke, but everyone talks fondly of them. They had fun, and having that fun is important. So I'm not coming here going, this is ridiculously powered and as a slag. I'm pointing out more for the community than anything. This is how to run it. This is how to do it. This is how to break it. So they can have as much fun with it as they can.
Next time we have you
And
on
then we get
here,
to human.
Scraz, we'll have to get a glossary of terms. I don't know have any idea what slag means, but
Sorry,
explain
I'm
it.
Australian.
European,
Bag out. Yeah.
European, Australian.
Uh, all
We get
right.
to human, and this is by far the maybe other than undead, by far the one that got the most talk, the most pushback, and um, fundamentally to me, I just disagree with. Um, Innately, I'm going to start with human was low picked. And when it was picked, I did not see it performing very well. I'm going to, I have, I sat in the Discord of a kingdom that went human core, and I'm in their private Discord to the point of just watching them struggle as I will say, average kingdom with human. To me, really highlighted how difficult human could, well, just be to run in general, and how relatively weak they seemed compared to the other average buffs. So humans definitely needed a buff. And the first thing I did was, look, if they have Tree of Gold, they don't need excess military wages. Let's just cut them there and start with that, and then say, okay, what other gimmick can I give a human that's going to make it unique in some way? Because I don't just want to be plus 70% science. And well, yeah, those 4 people that sat on universities and got 60 wars and all the scientist war women were God and nobody else was able to use it. That's not what I want to aim for when I'm trying to do something unique or gimmicky. And I remembered that, well, if a human has cheap, um, has doesn't have the military wages, has Tree of Gold, well, we humans in general can build prisons everywhere. Just like that is something that humanity does. So how about we give it the all land is can hold prisoners. and I don't want to make it that they can hold too much per acre. So I'm going to pull off their ability to add dungeons as well, and then try and say, okay, how many prisoners and how much can they really store before it becomes truly unbreakable? I've played in the past the races that had everything can hold prisoners, both in World of Legends and Genesis. And in Genesis, I played to the point of we force fed somebody to the max prisoners every end of war ceasefire, every constantly in war when we were chaining or getting when they were getting chained. We fed those soldiers in there to specifically desert so they had that population. And that bonus, even though it's in numbers strong, never really felt overwhelming compared to everything else. So I picked a number, 10 prisoners per acre, and said, okay, this seems reasonable. The key to prisoners converting is either you max it in end of war ceasefire, and then you run high banks and you just tree gold, and you can just put out an insane amount of gold on a human. Okay, fine. You put out 50 million gold, everybody else put out 30 million gold. You train to your gold elites per acre. Now you got 20 million gold. Good luck holding on to it. There's very few use cases that having that much excess gold when you leave end of war ceasefire truly impacts the game. If I were anybody, I would just not agree to ever war a human kingdom that was coming out of end of war ceasefire before I had time to drain them of gold a little bit. To that end, they also get some free elites. Again, what does it matter if you get 70 elites per acre or 30 elites per acre? At some point, you just have too many, and it's just a gold advantage. The biggest advantage here is when you're chained. When you're chained, all your desertions go to prisoners. When you get chained and all your everything goes to prisoners, those now convert back to elites over time. That is a can be a very strong bonus. Again, my experience with it was it wasn't as strong as people think, but it was a nice sustained bonus. It was a nice advantage. But one of the things people are often forgetting is prisoners have net worth. Your elites have net worth. When you're chaining somebody when everything goes to prisoners, they hold net worth better. You chain them better. You can deep chain someone much better when they have an extra 16 net worth per acre in prisoners. That's a decent amount of net worth that you can really deep chain someone more. The more you deep chain, the less prisoners they're holding. The less prisoners they're holding, the less of an advantage that is. And from my perspective, this seems to be about where I would balance the same power as Orc, the same power as Fairy. That this seems to be about where I settled on via all my simulation and my experience play. And I'll pass it to Scraz from there.
Okay, you know I think it's broken. So I'm going to explain a couple of mechanics that some people might not be aware of. So when you overpopulate, your desertions fill up your prisoners first. So what you can do with this is deliberately overpop yourself to get free elites. Now, that is, by itself not that great until you realize how much you can abuse that. Like with aid or with even basic stuff by doing huge artisan science and having like 2-tick builds, building huge homes and then raising them and stuff like that to get huge amounts of elites. Whether it's fully broken or not, I actually don't care because it's the other stuff that human has that I think makes them really good. So the plus 10% science efficiency means that they're going to sing late age again. You make it's another multiplier. You multiply that, then you add live, so you multiply it again, and then you add like a good racial science multiplier in with that as well, like a personality, sorry, and you can start doing some very silly things. The extra casualties, the fountain of knowledge, tree of gold. Tree of gold is very powerful. Plus spell rune costs. Yeah, you're losing a few percent land mid to late age in that. So yeah, cool. Then with like a 13.5 elite and all of that, I just think it has income and science to really snowball late age. And I think that's the more broken thing. And at early age, it's abusable with the elites to have more elites than anyone else except undead, and to hold your own in that regard.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh,
So those are the kind of two opinions and two thoughts on it, and I am eager to see someone truly abuse it in a way that I could not predict if they're able to do that. And if they're able to do that, good on them. We will deal with it next stage. If they are not able to do it, I will feel very vindicated as a player and uh, as a balanced person. So we can go on to orc unless there's any other thoughts on humans.
I mean, I think 10 prisoners per acre is a pretty high number, but it'll be fun. I mean, it gives people that opportunity to try something, and having more viable options is better than having less, certainly.
Okay, on to orc. So I thought orc was the strongest race by as far as attackers went in the past age. My gut was to, again, remove TPA and WPA bonuses. And so initially I'm like, okay, let's remove it and give them a hit to population. And it's like, okay, everybody's like, nope, that's too much. Okay, well, instead of a hit to population, let's allow them to have, let's hit their ability to have homes, because homes is effectively just a population mod anyway. And everybody, no, zero homes means you might as well not even have the race in the game. It's like, okay, I would disagree, but I will respect everybody's thinking on that. So it's like, how do we get orcs in a spot that gives them a slight penalty that is still meaningful without completely gutting them and without not giving them enough penalty? So it's like, okay, if no homes is too much, half effectiveness homes for your population. They still produce the peasants per acre that homes produce, which is, or peasants per home, which it's like, okay, so you're still getting some benefit of those homes, and you're still getting the benefit of homes in the fact that they now don't take up jobs and provide a little bit extra population. But here's a spot where I think orc gets you relatively close to where I thought everybody else should be.
I actually think Orc is almost unpickable, if I'm honest. Um, it has a lot of offense, and Massacre is a hell of a drug in war. Let's be honest, it's very, very good. Um, but the homes penalty is really, really crippling. And it's not crippling just because it's like a pop thing. It's crippling because of how unfilled jobs and building efficiency works. So to get good BE in an orc is almost impossible this coming age.
Okay. Uh, uh, with that, I'll go on to the next one then. And the next one is Undead, which, again, after Human saw a lot of talking about how powerful it is, and I'll start with how to gimmick Undead. I found Undead to be unusable with no hospitals. You just lose too much defense too fast when you're attacking with Undead, unless you pick Cleric. And I wanted to redo Cleric. So I'm like, okay, let's give them the innate little bit of Cleric instead of Soldiers. I'm going to move the Soldiers fun to Cleric that everyone can play with Soldiers somehow. And I'm going to give them back Hospitals. And then I need to give them a gimmick that's not just no food and plague. I got to give them something that's unique, some kind of penalty that isn't no hospitals, that isn't no thievery, that isn't just a nothing. Um, so I looked at their numbers: 13, 4, 11, 11. How about I make them decently strong on defense, but I make them kind of like a reverse avian. Instead of unable to be ambushed, they get ambushed for everything. Now, ambush for everything, I think, is too much of a penalty. You should not have the ability to hit someone and take all their land. That's just, to me, that's almost as crippling as anything that would exist. So I'm going to just make it a lot easier to take land. But I also need to, in that they give more land. And I need to make it very easy to do that. So the best way to make it very easy to ambush is to have an elite that is only 1 point defense. But if I have an elite that's only 1 point defense and 11% offense, 11 point offense spec, I'm just going to mix those in, and now there's I basically built in my ambush protection a little bit. So let's make the offense spec really crappy, and let's force you into an elite in. It's very cheap, so you might as well train it over a spec anyway, and you might as well be able to use credits, because why should I only effectively dump my credits into offense specs with a crappy anyway? So let's give it effectively a try and remove the effective utility of offense spec while still allowing people to um, run offensive specs if they want to for some reason. I don't want to specifically remove everybody's ability to do something. I just want to make it a lot more difficult. And I think, given where it's at, with a very ambushable elite, it is not too terrible. However, it also might be a little strong in that I gave it extra defense spec, because I'm like, okay, if you're already getting everything ambushed, you might just innately need to run some offense specs to stop like a fairy ambushing you with 1,000 soldiers, or a halfling ambushing you with 1,000 soldiers, because 1,000 soldiers are now ambushing 3,000 elites. That's a pretty easy number. So okay, let's boost its defense specs a little bit. It's a little bit more defense, but that allows it to phase in offense specs. It doesn't want to be ambushable, or just be a tank as a providence of 14-12 if it really wants to run suicidal and not worry about ambushing. And I'll go to Scraz then to talk about literally all the abuse you can do with it.
I'm actually not going to go too hard on this one. I wish Miles was here because he loves ranting about undead at the moment. Um, but I will say this: I don't think they're beatable in the first war for sure because of how cheap their elites are. And I don't think the ambush stuff matters in war where you're chaining either. So big deal. The chain gets four big ambushes off. Who cares? You've chained them down, probably like four tapping all the way down. You know, um, outside of war, I think these things break thief mages rather than worry about being ambushed. They just exclusively hit people with no offense. Um, so I think that's quite good. The military losses is good. Plague is RNG good. No food eaters, it's building efficiency essentially, or space, I should say. Ghost workers is good. Can train elites with credits is insane, but they also only cost only 500, so it's not that big a buff. Um, I just think it's a lot of good with the penalty being something you can work around quite easily. That's all.
Fair enough. And unless David had thoughts, we can move on to personalities.
Oh, I think it'll be fun.
Okay, so when it came to personalities, I kind of took I don't really like cleric as it was, because I want to push some of that stuff onto undead, but I don't want to do a giant mix up on personalities when I'm already doing that to races. The main thing I would wanted to do was kind of buff a little bit, a couple of the weaker ones, rework cleric, and hit a little bit some of the stronger ones. Like tactician, and I will just jump all the way down to that, is basically the same. It was one of the strongest picks, so it's like, okay, well, I'm trying to get things a little bit closer to tactician. Let's remove that enhanced conquest, because that's not meaningful, but at least it's something. And then kind of leave that where it is and work from there to balance around the tactician level. To that end, when I looked at artisan, the artisan is basically unchanged, but artisan science efficiency isn't exactly a great science, and it's not a 25% wasn't exactly a huge bonus to something that barely scales. So let's lower that efficiency and give it something that also plays with artisan concept. If you're already working all your buildings and you know, you're building focused, you're probably, if you were thinking, fantasy things, you're probably got people who are decent at bookkeeping. So, okay, sciences lose a little, but I'm going to give bookkeeping a little bit just so you have that extra little buff to do something. Now, I will say, specifically, looking at the artisan in Scraz's Kingdom Last Age, artisan was not as weak as people thought, but it definitely didn't compete generally, so I didn't want to give it too much of a bonus.
I thought Artisan was absolutely fine this stage, and I think it's absolutely fine next stage. I will say I do think you underestimate how good Artisan science efficiency is, though. When you get to like 1 or 2 tick builds, which is possible with a bit over 2 million books, it becomes a different game that you play. Like being able to have TG, like training grounds for a hit, and then forts literally a tick later and be unbreakable is kind of nutty, and it's a lot of fun. Um, I'm not saying it's broken. It takes so much investment. It takes so much time to get to that kind of level, and then it's like only really good for like the last 2 weeks of the age. But doing that, I still think you underestimate how good artisan science is. And if someone really wants to have fun but not really compete, I'd say have fun doing that. Just do a heap of artisan sci and see some nutty stuff that you can do with being able to build change like every tick.
That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I had a player run Artisan in Genesis. They hit that minus 100% build time, and no one had hit that before. And in Genesis, instead of actually giving you minus 100%, what it did is it generated all the acres you were trying to build, and she blew to like 70,000 acres in 5 minutes. And then David came and fixed it and put a cap in. And doing things where you break the game is fun. So, I mean, I will give credit to that of maybe I do underestimate it. Hopefully 5% hit didn't remove that fun too much, and the bookkeeping only makes it more fun.
We did
So I'll move.
fix those potential bugs.
So I'll move to cleric, and I didn't want to reintroduce self spell casting. I don't need to worry about all the stuff that gets all the implementation implications of that. So I'm like, okay, I want undead to be the tanky one. What do I do on cleric that makes it tanky and kind of fun and kind of unique? And I'm like, okay, well, how about all its military soldiers and all your soldiers do something? So people now draft faster with soldiers, and if you're hit with soldiers, so now cleric is just naturally going to be training. I will admit that I don't think I would run cleric outside of um, I wouldn't run it in a competitive kingdom because I think it's gimmicky to the point of I think you're going to end up getting night striked or getting or thinking that hey look what I can do, and then it's not as effective as you thought. So I think that this couldn't theory trap a lot of people, but I think it's a gimmick that could be fun for enough people that at least is something that's workable to have in the game.
Yeah, so cleric, I don't know how I feel about it, and I don't think that I'll pick it in a competitive kingdom. That being said, Smiles continually tells me that everyone's sleeping on it, and if he sees something I don't, which is likely, he's a good player. Then it might be better than I anticipate.
Cool. On to Heretic. So Scraz has said to me he thinks Heretic is much stronger than Mystic and Rogue. And I will go to, I always liked the concept of having three almost equal picks for your Thief Mages. The issue Heretics can have, and I'm not saying they do, but can have, is that spell damage, that sabotage damage, the wizard production, and lack of thievery losses. It's like all that's great, but heretic is only as effective as its success rate. And I think giving it the sorcery science, while you can hit like a brick, I think I'd rather have it hit consistently in both the things it's supposed to focus in, than really over trying to overtune a science that doesn't scale as much to make it usable. To that end, I don't think you're ever going to have a situation where, personally, where a heretic can truly replace meteor showers or can truly replace the thievery only ops that Rogue gets. In addition, Mystic and Rogue are both getting more mana and stealth, so in theory, they're doing more, or at least more as consistent but more number of ops than the heretic, and building up honor faster because they're doing more number of ops. But with that said, I'm willing to take thoughts on that, and I'm willing to hear what Scratz's thoughts are.
Okay. First of all, I'll say you're right in one instance, and that is that things like meteor showers and propaganda or whatever are sometimes absolutely needed. And in a setup, they're absolutely needed. So you're still forced to pick at least one mystic for that type of coverage. That being said, I think Heretic does pretty much everything that both of those do, especially with the both having crime and channeling psi efficiency, but better. And you get access to Fool's Gold, which is incredible with all this extra income in the game that the draft rate is going to do for end of war ceasefires. And I personally am a huge fan of nightmares. I love nightmare chaining, so I don't see any reason to not run Heretic over either of the others.
Fair enough. And just for what it's worth, I really like running Nightmare Chains as well. In Divinity, that was one of our staple things that we did. And so having a heretic that's in a situation where it can do that, I think is a reasonable trade-off for meteor showers and or all the rogue ops that you're losing, but you are making a trade-off and you are choosing something when you choose heretic. So, and I'll go to merchant then. So I didn't really want to mess with merchant too much, but merchant definitely needed something. And one of the things that I have wanted in the game that I used to want on tactician until now it's too strong, is somebody somewhere needs to be able to just always get intel. There's there is too many times where I'm running an orc on 2.5 TPA and I literally burn 50% stealth trying to get a single spy on military or a single not now spy on defense. And it's like it is just too hard to get intel into a really high TPA halfling or a chained halfling or just in general really difficult. So thematically, like, okay, if a merchant has all these people and set up all these shops in everybody's city and they're trading, so all their gold is going up, they seem like a decent place to put 100% successful espionage. And they've already got income. Successful in espionage is effectively an income bonus if you're not losing thieves. But in talking with David, David thought just pure 100% was a little too much. And if your average attacker, your average person is already sometimes failing at least half, oftentimes more, doubling the stealth costs seems to be a spot where you can kind of put successful intel at a reasonable balance. And I'll just say, because of double stealth costs on intel, running a kingdom of merchants will definitely limit your stealth as a kingdom to doing other things, but I'm not sure the trade-off for 100% successful ops kingdom-wide would truly matter if you could come up with a setup that the income bonus and the clear sight bonus were vital to a kingdom level strategy on Scraz.
Okay, I might be wrong here. So I'm going to preface this by saying that in terms of like getting intel, I 100% agree with you and have for many ages now been pushing to make intel in general easier. So I like that this is in the game. I wish it was somewhere else because everything else I think makes the merchant with all the other stuff you've got in here unplayable. So I don't think we'll actually see it.
Fair enough. One of the nice things about getting it on Merchant, though, will now officially be coded into the game, and we can utilize it moving forward more dynamically.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'll jump to Mystic and Rogue. Generally, both are really strong. I didn't really want to touch them. I didn't want to overtune their efficiency such that they scaled too hard. They're still slightly above Heretic. Well, so Heretic should be focusing on both. A Mystic should be focusing a little bit harder on channeling. The Rogue slightly more on crime. In theory, they should be operable. Not perfectly, but if I push up the science anymore to address how strong we made Heretic, I think you overtuned them both. So I kind of just left them where they were, and we'll see how they play out.
Any thoughts, Raz?
Yeah, I don't think I need to reiterate on this. I just think that Heretic just does it better. I do like meteor showers. I do like the stealth and mana recovery. I do think that if you like going for like huge number of ops across the kingdom, there is play there. I just think that there's better.
Mm.
Cool. Then we will get to the four, and I'm going to group these all together because there aren't a lot of changes. The four effectively attacking personalities: Shepherd, Tactician, War Hero, and Warrior. So I thought Tactician was slightly too strong, but I didn't want to change it too much. And I thought so because it's slightly too strong compared to Warrior, I'm like, okay, look, if Warrior's already running huge offense, let's just say, hey, if I can't break you normally, I'm going to just conquest the shit out of you. So here's your access to enhanced conquest for Warrior. Conceptually, that seems like a better place to put enhanced conquest on Warrior than War Hero or Shepherd. And then to that end, I don't really want to change War Hero too much either. I think its use on things like Dark Elf. It has its use generally if you want to couple it with Undead now and actually utilize that 9 to 14 conversion to even more converty. I think it's in a reasonable spot without being dominating, and I think that gimmick of converting shouldn't ever necessarily be the dominating mechanism again, unless we want to push that to everybody like it used to be. So that pushed Shepherd Shepherd was too weak, and it was relatively weak compared to the other three, unless you were doing very specific situations where you were trying to couple military losses, high BE, castles, stances, rituals. Unless you're trying to couple all that together, Shepherd generally was a little weak. And if you want to couple all that together, I still don't think it necessarily outdid like Tactician coupling with Haste or Warrior coupling with Onslaught or Tactician with Onslaught. So I'm like, okay, what is a really strong bonus that we've had before that push it up? And that's that +1 general. So if you're losing less land and hitting with Shepherd, well, how about you take 2 of your generals and you just spare off hit now, and hit somebody that's already been chained. It's like, doesn't take that much extra offense, and now you have 5 hits instead of 4 to deal with. And if you're chaining someone and maybe you don't run it on, thinking, undead. If you have 5 generals and you're an undead, you know, everybody's pushable, but if you attack 5 times and your attack is about the same attack time as someone else, that first hit's never getting ambushed. They just don't have the generals to do it. So this Shepherd now provides some additional utility and kind of catches Shepherd up to the other attacking personalities. And Scraz can wrap this up then.
Um, Honestly, I actually love that you put one general on Shepherd. I don't think it was playable, and now it is. And I don't think it breaks it either. Plus, one general is such a huge, powerful tool that quite often I think gets broken on things. But in this instance, I actually really like it. So I want to actually congratulate you on that. I think it's quite well balanced. Um, Warrior, I actually already found better than Tactician personally. I think a lot of top kingdoms defaulted to Tactician anyway, but Warrior just scales so well. Like that Ohm is free from net worth, and net worth efficiency with net worth based attacking actually matters quite a lot. Um, and I actually think it's fantastic in general Warrior. Giving it an enhanced conquest attack doesn't break it though. So again, I'm fine with that and tact as they are. I do want to bring a little bit of I guess highlight to the war hero. With your war changes, there will be a little bit more honor going around, and because there's more honor going around, the war hero I think is actually a little bit better, and there's potential there for a really good kingdom to run it and stack honor like they used to with on those war hero ages. I don't think it's easy. I don't think people should pick it unless they are really good. But I do like that that's now there again.
Yeah,
Excellent. And that kind
I
of
love them.
addresses all the changes from my perspective and kind of summarizes everything together. I'll let David take it to end us then.
Yeah, no, that was wonderful. I appreciate everything that you guys have both contributed to the discussion here this evening. I and tomorrow morning for Scratch. So thank you both for being here and providing all that insight to the community. I think the ideas and the ways that each of you think differently from each other on a lot of different topics here, it can be very valuable to a lot of the community members, especially those non-leaders who don't really do the strategy and the thinking and the planning, understanding how things work and how leaders actually come up with a kingdom plan and what are we going to do and how are we going to start chaining and what are we going to do for growing different provinces within the kingdom to utilize a good strategy for upcoming wars and other things. So it was really wonderful being able to listen to you guys here this evening. I don't get a chance to play a lot of any World of Legends, but I do sometimes get a chance to play some Genesis, and it is not quite the same strategy or tactics as World of Legends. It's just more get in there and have some fun. So I think a lot of the sort of gimmicky things that you put in here will provide for a lot of fun on Genesis as well as World of Legends coming up this age. I'm really looking forward to some of the new things, especially the mechanics that have been put in here. I really I do want to just leave off with asking what you guys both think is going to be the most fun new mechanic that you guys that we see here in the age 106 changes. And for me, it is definitely going to be the auto explore from the pool explore pool reaching the maximum capacity, and with the um, coupled with the way end of war ceasefire works, when a kingdom surrenders, if you're at the max pool, you're going to auto surrender some of that stuff. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see. One of the things that Persane and I talked about as we were figuring out just how to balance that and make it work for this age is once you consider all the provinces in the server have the ability to max their pool, because not a lot of players used pool, and that was a lot of the reasoning behind why Persane wanted to put that into the game, was to get people to interact with the pool more, understand it's not just something that only the thief mages use and do and growth kingdoms use to get bigger than everybody else. It's a viable resource for everyone throughout the game to utilize and learn to interact with it a lot more. And now the forcing of everybody to either explore or auto explore is going to inject a lot of acres into the game, and it's hard to really tell exactly without actually going in and looking at some of the numbers within the game. Um, I mean, if you just think if half of the players in the server had max pool at one halfway into the age, let's say, you're now going to be injecting like thousands and thousands of acres, not over the course of the age, but every tick. Like you're literally injecting thousands of acres per tick, tens of thousands of acres per real life day. Like it's gonna be quite a lot of acres in the game, and I mean everybody wants to be bigger and have more acres, and they're gonna be there. It's gonna provide a lot more strategy, especially when we see kingdoms staying at smaller sizes or interacting at smaller sizes and things like that. Always you have that spread of the land growth kingdoms, getting out above others, and usually you've got the mix down below. But now we're with pushing all these acres into the game, you'll see sort of a wider spread that puts players and kingdoms that wouldn't normally interact at a certain level up to that level, and it's a different game when you're fighting at a 20,000 acre kingdom size versus 40,000 acre kingdom size versus 80,000 acre kingdom size. Like the game is played differently as more acres are available, and so putting more people into those scenarios I think is going to be a lot of fun and very interesting to see how players react to it. So Persane, what do you think is going to be your most fun, exciting change to see this age, how it works, how it plays out?
So I would probably mimic. I think the most fun part is going to be seeing how people really utilize or abuse the constant explore. Um, I, I have a feeling there's going to be a kingdom out there that both utterly fails and incredibly succeeds in out of protection, um, or let's say War Two, maybe a little bit more key. War Two, when everybody's a little pumped, who massively aids a couple people to max their pool and starts gaining free acres in war. And it's like, oh, look, I just abused this, and my safe people are gaining free acres really fast and building all this econ really fast that never used to be able to occur because your thief mages couldn't attack because they were barely safe, but now they're getting 50 acres a day when, so 100 acres over the course of a war when the average province size is like 600 acres. I think that could be a really fun thing, but I also think it could be really hilarious where a couple people try that and then just utterly fail and it just destroys their kingdom. And that's going to be something that could be both feel devastating, but be like, well, at least I tried something and this thing stinks and it doesn't work. And it was actually a horrible trap. And I think that seeing people both succeed and fail with that will be something that'll be really cool. I'm personally, when I look at all the changes that I kind of play together, I personally would like to try the fairy soldier, fairy maybe war hero or something, some form of attacking fairy using the soldiers because I think it could be fun. There's a good chance I won't end up being fairy either way, but we'll see how my kingdom builds their setup when everything is set and where I need to be slotted um, moving forward. So.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting the way you put that. With it's sort of a secret way to grow your unbreakables or your TMs or something like that by aiding them acres if they don't already have the max pool to where now they're automatically growing without having to landlust, without having to attack, without having to spend resources and explore. They're growing, and if you don't put resources, if the enemy kingdom doesn't put resources to do something about that, they could easily become, a big problem. So that's going to be very interesting. I agree. Scries, what are your thoughts?
because it's such a lot of changes and some of them are quite big to mechanics. I actually am hoping to be proven wrong, or not wrong per se, but I want to see people break things that I didn't think of. I want to see stuff that I haven't thought of get absolutely bent over, and I just want to see the learning curve and what's possible under these changes, and learn and grow from there as like a community and see what works, what doesn't. I'm always about taking in data and like reassigning it and changing my perspective based on that. So I'm really like hope that people do something that I haven't thought about or seen in these changes, that I don't care if it's broken or not broken, that is just interesting. And I want to see like, and then like going forward how we can work with that and implement like ideas based around that kind of thing.
Yeah. I agree. It's certainly gonna be fun, and I'm looking forward to. What we'll have to do is have an end of age 106, just wrap up and see how we did and see what we thought and see what actually happened. That's gonna be very exciting. I'm gonna look forward to that. So once again, thank you Persane, thank you Scraz for joining me here today. Thank you for everybody who watched here tonight. I hope there's some good information that you guys were able to take away from this. I know it went a bit long here, but I mean this is once every few months. I think this is a good thing to do to get some valuable insights from some of the top players, top leaders, and especially some of the people who are putting these changes together. What the thoughts are and how it's going to affect the game. So invaluable ideas and things that you guys went over here tonight. So thank you very much for joining me. Until next time, this is David C., Persane, and Skraz from the Utopian Conclave signing off for this evening. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.